July 14, 2008. The air sizzled with summer heat, and the scent of popcorn, sunscreen, and funnel cakes lingered over Six Flags Magic Mountain like an invisible cloud. Families moved in swarms between roller coasters and water rides. Children screamed in delight, teenagers laughed in clusters, and music blared from every speaker. In the heart of the park, a small open-air stage called the Illusion Dome hosted one of the day's most anticipated shows. A magician, known as Tony Vale, dazzled audiences with flashy tricks and oversized gestures. At precisely 2:45 p.m., during the grand finale, a 10-year-old boy named Ethan Cole stepped slightly away from the crowd, clutching a crumpled program and a half-eaten ice cream cone. He was quiet, observant, the kind of child who asked too many questions and got lost in thoughts that wandered further than his feet ever dared. He loved magic, not just the tricks, but the mechanics behind them. As the magician conjured an enormous puff of smoke and gestured dramatically to a swirling curtain, Ethan noticed a narrow black door slightly ajar behind the stage, blending perfectly into the dark backdrop. No one else seemed to see it. Drawn by curiosity stronger than any warning his parents might have once given, Ethan slipped through the crowd unnoticed. He crossed the low stage barrier, crept behind the props, and gently pushed the door open. What lay beyond was a hallway, dimly lit and lined with crates, wires, and equipment. He stepped inside, and then he vanished. Just like that. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't. His sister, Mia Cole, then only 11, turned her head a moment later and realized he was no longer beside her. At first she thought he'd gone to get another snack, or maybe to the restroom. But as minutes turned to half an hour, and her calls for his name grew louder, panic set in. Their parents were nearby, enjoying a shaded bench. When Mia ran to them in tears, the chaos began. Security was alerted. Announcements echoed through the park. Employees in red polo shirts spread out, asking guests if they'd seen a small boy in a yellow baseball cap with the name Ethan written on the brim. The park didn't shut down. The rides continued. The music played. But the Cole family's world stopped spinning. Park security reviewed nearby cameras, but footage around the stage area was mysteriously blank during that exact time. A technical glitch, they claimed. The camera had been offline for maintenance. Mia remembered seeing Ethan near the stage and led officers there, but the magician was already gone, and the performance had ended. In the scramble, someone found Ethan's hat tucked behind a curtain backstage. It had a smudge of dust on the brim, as if it had fallen in a place long forgotten. For the next several hours, the park turned into a controlled frenzy. Staff combed through bathrooms, ride queues, and maintenance tunnels. The sheriff's department was called. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled above. Nothing. No witnesses, no cries for help, no sound, no struggle. Ethan Cole had simply evaporated into thin air. In the days that followed, his face appeared on every local news station. Flyers with his photo, blue eyes, shaggy blonde hair, soft smile, were taped to light posts, mall entrances, and the gates of Six Flags itself. But behind the scenes, something strange happened. The park's administration began clamping down on information. Staff were told not to talk to media. The show where Ethan disappeared was quietly cancelled the following week. The stage was sealed. The magician, Tony Vale, never returned. Official statements were vague. The family was offered condolences, then silence. The world moved on. But one girl didn't. Mia Cole, even at 11, knew something was wrong. She didn't believe in vanishing acts. She believed in answers. And 16 years later, she would be the one to find them. Before we go deeper into what happened after that day, and what would be uncovered years later, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this are just the beginning. Now, let's keep going. The days after Ethan's disappearance were a blur of sleepless nights, police interviews, and hollow promises. The Cole family, once ordinary and happy, fractured under the weight of silence and speculation. News crews camped outside their home in Simi Valley. Journalists shouted questions as if pain could be turned into answers. Headlines speculated wildly. Was it parental neglect? Kidnapped or lost? Six Flags tragedy, a park's worst nightmare. Inside the house, grief carved deep trenches. Ethan's room remained untouched. His bedsheet still smelled of boyish shampoo and summer air. His comic books lay open where he had left them, as if he would return any second to finish a page. Mia's parents, Sandra and Rick Cole, didn't know how to cope. Rick threw himself into work, disappearing for long stretches without speaking. Sandra drifted between rooms like a ghost, staring out windows or clutching Ethan's stuffed lion to her chest. At school, Mia became the girl with the missing brother. Whispers followed her in hallways. Some classmates offered awkward kindness, others kept their distance. Teachers gave her space, which only deepened the loneliness. At night, Mia would lie awake and replay every second of that day. Had she looked away too long? Should she have held his hand tighter? What if she had gone after him? Questions stabbed her over and over. She wrote Ethan letters in a spiral notebook, each one beginning the same. "I'm sorry, I miss you, I'll find you." Her guilt turned into obsession. While other kids played sports or gossiped, Mia scoured online forums about missing children. She studied park layouts, watched YouTube videos about Six Flags, and begged her parents to take her back there. They never did. Rick grew impatient with her questions. Sandra, terrified of false hope, refused to speak about that day. "We need to move on," she said one morning, her voice shaking but final. But Mia couldn't. She remembered the last time she saw Ethan's eyes, how they sparkled with wonder as the magician pulled fire from a silk scarf. She remembered the way he had leaned toward that dark door, unnoticed by all. That moment looped endlessly in her mind. 2 months after the incident, the Coles tried family therapy. It didn't help. Each session ended in tears or silence. The therapist suggested they hold a memorial to gain closure. Rick agreed. Sandra cried. Mia refused. She didn't want closure. She wanted her brother back. As time passed, the media moved on to new tragedies. The flyers were taken down. Other children went missing. Other families grieved. The world didn't stop for Ethan. On the 1-year anniversary, Sandra placed a white rose at the park gates. Mia stayed home. That night she snuck into the attic and opened a cardboard box labeled Ethan School Projects. She read every drawing, every science fair write-up. Each one whispered the same thing: "Don't forget me." By the time Mia turned 16, her world had narrowed to one goal. She kept a folder under her mattress with every article, every dead lead, and every theory. She emailed police departments, filed public records requests, and even interviewed retired park staff on internet forums. Most didn't respond. Some gave cryptic answers. A few told her to stop digging, but she never did. At 17, she got a part-time job just to save money for a private investigator. He took her deposit, made some calls, then ghosted her. That only hardened her resolve. Her parents grew distant. Dinners were eaten in silence. Birthdays passed uncelebrated. Holidays became shadows of themselves. Once, Sandra told her, "You have to live your life, Mia." But Mia didn't know how to live without her brother. Every time she walked through a crowded place, a mall, a festival, a train station, she scanned faces, blue eyes, blonde hair. A glimpse was enough to make her heart spike, just before it crashed again. Then came year 10. By then, even close relatives stopped mentioning Ethan's name. His pictures faded in frames. The Cole family looked whole on the outside, but something vital had been carved out and buried deep. Mia, now in college, studied criminal justice, not for a career, for a reason. She wanted to learn the system from the inside. She wanted to understand how people disappeared in plain sight, because deep inside her, under the layers of grief and time, burned a promise. She would not stop. Not until Ethan came home, and she had no idea that one final clue had just been found. Detective Ray Navarro still remembered the smell of the popcorn that afternoon. The day he stepped onto the case, he had no idea it would follow him for the rest of his life. Freshly promoted to lead investigator at the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, he had been eager to prove himself. Ethan Cole's disappearance was supposed to be his defining case. But some cases don't want to be solved. Navarro met the Coles 3 days after the incident. Sandra couldn't stop shaking. Rick paced with clenched fists. Mia sat stiffly in a corner, her eyes hollow. Navarro asked his questions gently, took notes diligently, and promised them he would not rest until Ethan was found. His team interviewed over 100 park employees. They checked maintenance logs, examined stage schematics, and consulted stage engineers. They ran background checks on every staff member working that day, including the magician Tony Vale, who had already left town before investigators arrived. The surveillance camera glitch was the first red flag. The camera near the stage, which should have caught every angle of the performance and backstage area, had recorded nothing for a full 30 minutes. The timing was perfect, too perfect. A maintenance report dated that same morning claimed it had been shut down for software recalibration. Navarro flagged it, but without footage, it was only a suspicion. Search dogs were brought in. They traced Ethan's scent behind the stage, just past the black door Mia had described, then lost it completely in the corridor beyond. No scent in the park's main walkways, no trail outside the gates. As if the boy had walked into a void. Dive teams were dispatched to search the park's water rides and reservoirs. The theater building was combed from top to bottom. Nothing turned up. Tips poured in from across the state. Dozens of sightings, all unconfirmed. A boy in Bakersfield, a child spotted in a San Diego gas station, a kid matching Ethan's description seen boarding a bus in Nevada. Navarro chased them all. Everyone ended in disappointment. Weeks turned into months, leads slowed, witness memories blurred. The trail went cold. Internally, the sheriff's office began redirecting resources. Other crimes demanded attention. The pressure to deliver answers weighed heavily on Navarro's shoulders. His supervisors wanted resolution. Any resolution. Then came the theory. One of the junior officers suggested Ethan may have run away. The report implied it subtly, couched in clinical language. Voluntary departure cannot be ruled out. Navarro hated it. Ethan was 10. He had no history of behavioral issues. He loved his family. But with no evidence of foul play, some began to lean into that narrative. Navarro pushed back, hard, but the department needed a conclusion. 2 years after the disappearance, with no new evidence and mounting public fatigue, the case was officially marked as inactive, not closed, but shelved, presumed abducted, no suspects, no charges, no justice. For Navarro, the case became a scar. He never stopped thinking about the black door, the missing footage, the stage techs who refused to return calls, the magician who vanished from public life without explanation. It all smelled wrong. He kept a copy of Ethan's file in his locked cabinet. He reviewed it on sleepless nights. He replayed every interview, every photo, every contradiction. He wondered what he missed. Mia had reached out to him several times as she got older. He answered every email. She asked questions he couldn't answer. He admired her fire, the way she refused to let time erase her brother. But each time they spoke, he heard the same bitterness in his own voice. "I don't have anything new. I'm sorry." And he was sorry. Deeply. Ethan's case was the only one Navarro had never moved forward. He'd worked murders, kidnappings, drug raids, but this boy, this single child, had slipped through every net he cast. By 2020, Navarro was nearing retirement. He had less energy, more regrets. He kept a photo of Ethan in his wallet, faded and worn. Not out of duty, out of guilt. Because sometimes not solving a case feels worse than failing. It feels like betrayal. He told himself, if anything ever comes back, anything at all, I'll be there. I owe him that. And while the world slept through the years, behind a sealed panel hidden from sight, the first real clue had remained untouched. Waiting. It had been 16 years since the laughter turned to silence at Six Flags. The park had changed. New rides replaced old ones, buildings were remodeled, paint freshened. But some corners remained untouched, left to decay behind locked doors and faded staff-only signs. In early March 2024, Six Flags Magic Mountain announced a routine demolition project. An old performance building, inactive for over a decade, was scheduled to be torn down to make room for a new virtual reality attraction. The building had once hosted magic shows, concerts, and Halloween events. Since 2009 it had been closed, marked under renovation, though no work was ever done. It was a Friday morning when a maintenance worker named Carlos Mendez, assigned to inspect the interior before demolition, entered through the rusted service door. Dust hung thick in the air, graffiti covered backstage walls, broken lighting rigs lay in piles. The place felt forgotten by time. Carlos worked his way toward the back of the main stage, checking support beams and marking weak structures. That's when he noticed something odd, a section of the back wall that sounded hollow when tapped. The wood there was different, newer, covered in old black paint but sealed too neatly. He hesitated. Then, using a crowbar, he pried the panel loose. Behind it was a narrow cavity. Dust rushed out. Inside, tucked between beams and insulation, was a small backpack, faded blue, with a frayed zipper and a keychain shaped like a lightning bolt. Carlos called his supervisor. Security arrived. Police were notified. By that afternoon, the backpack had been transported to the Ventura County Evidence Lab. Inside were several items: a sketchbook filled with doodles, a miniature flashlight, a plastic toy dinosaur, and an ID badge issued by Six Flags in July 2008. The name on it read Ethan Cole. Also inside was a folded piece of paper, aged and crumpled. Written in shaky handwriting, likely by a child, were just 6 words: "I hear them at night. Help." News spread fast. Six Flags issued a short statement, confirming the discovery and pledging cooperation with law enforcement. They avoided any mention of Ethan Cole by name. The building's demolition was postponed indefinitely. At the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, the backpack's arrival sent a shock through the department. Some of the younger officers didn't recognize the name. Others did, and froze. Detective Ray Navarro, though long retired, still checked in once a week. A clerk he'd mentored texted him a photo of the badge. He stared at it for several minutes before picking up the phone. At a university campus 3 states away, Mia Cole's phone rang just past midnight. "Miss Cole," the voice said, "this is Ray Navarro. We found something. You might want to come home." She didn't ask questions. She didn't sleep. She booked the earliest flight and packed in silence. The world outside her window blurred past in streaks of streetlights and headlights. Her hands trembled, but her mind was crystal clear. Something had survived, something had waited to be found. Back in California, media trucks gathered outside the sheriff's office by the next morning. Rumors flew. Was this finally the break the case needed? Could Ethan's disappearance be solved after so long? Navarro, grayer and slower than before, waited outside the evidence room as technicians carefully catalogued each item. He held the sketchbook in gloved hands. On the cover, written in black marker, were the words "My Secrets." Inside, pages showed drawings of roller coasters, dinosaurs, and what appeared to be floor plans of a stage. Some were childish, others were disturbingly precise. One sketch showed a small square room with no windows and scribbles of faces in the walls. There was no blood, no remains. Just a boy's belongings hidden in a place no one should have been able to reach. Navarro didn't speak much that day. He didn't need to. The weight of 16 years pressed down on every breath. What haunted him most wasn't the evidence itself. It was the note. "I hear them at night." Who was them? And why had no one heard him? The wheels touched down at LAX just after sunrise. Mia hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but adrenaline pulsed through her like electricity. She didn't stop for coffee, didn't wait for luggage. She walked straight out of the terminal with a single backpack and called the number Navarro had given her. He was already waiting. The old Ford Crown Victoria pulled up slowly. Navarro stepped out, now in plain clothes, hair thinner, frame smaller than she remembered, but the eyes, those were the same, steady, alert, tired. They didn't hug. They just nodded. "You're sure it's his?" Mia asked as they drove east on the 210. Navarro didn't answer immediately. "The ID matches, the sketchbook. There are things in it only he could have drawn. And the note." She closed her eyes. "I know." They drove in silence. It had been over a decade since Mia had seen the Santa Clarita Hills. The landscape hadn't changed much. Familiar mountains, golden grass, and that strange blend of memory and absence. Her chest tightened as they turned toward the entrance of Six Flags. Security was tighter now. Barricades, cameras, curious onlookers. But Navarro had clearance, and Mia had questions no one else could ask. Inside the park, they were guided to the back lot, where the old stage building stood, weathered, scarred, its sign half fallen. A strip of yellow tape flapped gently in the wind. It looked forgotten, abandoned, like a scar left to rot. "This is where they found the backpack?" Mia asked. Navarro nodded. "Behind that panel." She stepped forward, peering into the hole in the wall. The cavity had been widened for investigation, wires hanging like veins, insulation torn. But what caught her attention was the smell: old dust, wood, and something faintly metallic, a scent that didn't belong. "Do you remember this building?" Navarro asked. "I remember the show," Mia said. "The magician, the smoke." Ethan leaning forward. I blinked and he was gone. She walked slowly around the perimeter. Every corner felt like a whisper. Every creak beneath her boots echoed with ghosts. Back inside, technicians had arranged Ethan's belongings on a table. Mia reached out, hands shaking slightly, and touched the sketchbook. Her breath hitched. On one of the inside pages was a drawing of a girl, long hair, big eyes, smiling. Next to her was a boy with spiky hair and a cape. In childlike handwriting it read, "Me and Mia. She's my hero." She turned away. Navarro stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "We pulled the building's maintenance logs," he said. "No one's touched this structure in years." "Which means that panel was sealed a long time ago." "But by who?" Mia whispered. "And why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a clear bag with the folded note inside. She read the words again. "I hear them at night. Help." It hit her harder now than it had over the phone. Ethan had written this, in fear, in the dark, alone. She stared at the wall, as if sheer will could rewind time. She imagined him 10 years old, curled behind that false panel, clutching his flashlight, listening for footsteps, hoping someone would hear. "We missed him," she murmured. Navarro exhaled sharply. Or someone didn't want him to be found. That thought twisted in her stomach. They spent the next few hours combing through the site. She took photos of the stage, the panel, the backstage corridors. Navarro showed her the limited documentation they'd recovered: blueprints, staff rosters, performance schedules from 2008. One name caught her eye. Not a magician, not a performer, a technician. She didn't say it aloud. Not yet. As they walked back toward the exit, Mia stopped at the threshold of the building. She looked back once, scanning the shadows. "Something happened here," she said. "And we've only scratched the surface," Navarro nodded. "Then let's keep digging," because the past had finally reached out, and Mia wasn't about to turn away. The following day, Navarro and Mia returned to the sheriff's office early. Files had been pulled overnight, and someone had located a list of former employees tied to the Illusion Dome in 2008. Most names meant nothing to Mia: assistants, riggers, part-time interns. But one name sent a chill through her: Jared Sloan. He was listed as a stage technician, hired 6 months before Ethan vanished. His file ended abruptly in August 2008, 1 month after the incident. No forwarding address, no reason for departure. Navarro rubbed his chin. "We tried contacting him back then. Never got a response." "Let's try again," Mia said. They tracked him to a cabin-style home outside Lake Arrowhead. It took 2 hours to get there. Long, winding roads, patchy cell service, dense trees pressing in from both sides. The house was small, paint peeling, windows fogged. An old truck sat rusting in the drive. Jared opened the door after several knocks. Late 30s, unshaven, eyes sunken. He recognized Navarro instantly. His expression soured when he saw Mia. "I'm not interested," he said, and started to close the door. Mia stepped forward. "It's about Ethan Cole." That stopped him. He opened the door wider, reluctantly. "He's still missing." "We found his backpack," Navarro said. "Inside the building. Jared paled. What building? You know which one, Mia said quietly. A long pause. He stepped aside. Come in. The interior was cluttered, dimly lit, filled with decades-old stage gear, coiled wires, lighting panels, dust-covered props. On the wall hung old photographs of shows, performers in costume, spotlights, trapdoor designs. One photo showed the Illusion Dome. Jared sat, his leg bouncing nervously. I didn't hurt that kid. No one's accusing you, Navarro said, but we need to understand what you saw, what you know. Jared rubbed his hands. There was something wrong with that stage. Back then, I mean. The blueprints we had, they didn't match the actual layout. What do you mean? Mia asked. There were extra access points, passages that didn't appear on the official documents. Like someone had modified it after the fact. Hidden spaces. Who would have done that? Navarro pressed. Jared hesitated. Tony Vale had his own guy. A builder. Worked off the record. Said it was for special effects. Secrets of the trade. Do you remember his name? No, but I remember the code he used for one passage. An infinity symbol drawn sideways with a tiny triangle under it. He painted it on the back of the prop closet. Mia froze. She pulled out Ethan's sketchbook from her bag, flipped to a page. There it was, drawn in the corner, an infinity symbol with a triangle beneath. Jared stared at it for a long time. He saw it too? He drew it himself, Mia said. Jared leaned back, stunned. There's more, he said finally. One night, maybe a week before the kid disappeared, I was doing inventory after hours. I heard something moving behind the main wall. I thought it was rats, but then I heard whispering. Mia's pulse quickened. I went to check, Jared continued, voice lower, but by the time I got there, the panel was shut like it was never open. You didn't report it? Navarro asked. I tried. My supervisor laughed it off, said I was being paranoid. And after Ethan vanished? Jared looked away. I asked questions, got pulled into a meeting with corporate. They told me to drop it. 2 days later, I was laid off. You never told anyone? Mia asked. Who would listen? Jared's voice cracked. They said it was just bad timing, but I knew. I knew something wasn't right. Navarro stood. We need you to come back with us. Show us where those hidden passages are, every entrance, every symbol. Jared hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll go, he said. But if that kid left something behind, it's not the only thing still hidden in that place. Mia gripped the sketchbook tighter, because now they weren't chasing shadows, they were chasing something real. And it had waited too long to be found. 2 days later, the park granted limited access under supervision. Jared Sloan arrived early, carrying a flashlight and a rolled-up blueprint he'd kept from 2008. He was jittery, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might follow. Mia, Navarro, and 2 deputies met him near the sealed stage building, now dim and hollow like a forgotten monument. They entered through a side service door. Dust swirled in the stale air. Jared led them past the main curtain into a narrow hallway behind the backdrop. He paused at a blank wall. This is where I saw the symbol, he said. He pulled aside a rotting strip of wallpaper. Faint beneath it was the infinity sign with a triangle below, painted in dark ink, nearly invisible without light. Mia ran her fingers across it. This was real, she whispered. Jared pressed a loose panel near the base of the wall. It gave way with a groan, revealing a cramped passage no more than 2 feet wide. Wires dangled overhead. The air inside was colder. You sure you want to go in there? One deputy asked. Mia answered by ducking through first. Navarro followed, then Jared, flashlight in hand. The passage sloped downward slightly, its floor lined with dust and scuff marks. Old cables ran along the walls. It twisted once, then again, before opening into a low, rectangular chamber. The space was silent. Mia scanned the room. Black-painted walls, foam insulation, a rusted air vent near the ceiling, shelving units covered in plastic sheeting. In the far corner, a collapsed crate and an old spotlight toppled on its side. Then she saw it. Carved into the metal casing of the spotlight in jagged, uneven strokes was a name. Ethan. She dropped to her knees, tracing the letters. Her breath caught. "He was here," she said. Jared swallowed hard. "I told you." Navarro examined the surrounding walls. "Why would this room exist?" "It was supposed to be storage," Jared said, "but it was never in the official layout. Someone repurposed it." "Into what?" Mia asked. No one answered. Jared moved toward one of the shelving units and peeled back the plastic. Beneath it were prop boxes labeled in faded Sharpie. Act 2, levitation rig, trapdoor panels, stage illusions. He opened one and revealed thick cables, harnesses and pulley systems. Another held scraps of cloth, costume pieces maybe. In the last box, beneath a coil of wires, was something strange. A collection of children's toys, a yo-yo, a bouncy ball, a finger puppet. "Why would these be here?" Navarro asked. Jared's face paled. "These aren't props." Mia stepped back. Her heart thudded. Ethan's sketchbook had pages filled with these exact toys. He'd drawn them repeatedly. "He had them with him," she whispered. "Someone brought them here." She turned to the wall opposite the entrance. Scrawled in crayon were faint lines, drawings of stars, a house, a dog. Childish. Then lower down, a line of tallies, dozens of them, maybe more. "Days," Navarro said softly. Mia's throat tightened. She couldn't breathe for a moment. He was counting how long he'd been trapped. They searched every inch of the room. No exit, no second passage. It was a sealed space with only the one hidden entrance. But someone had known about it. Someone had used it. As they prepared to leave, Jared stopped in front of the vent. "It's new," he said. "Wasn't here when I worked here." Navarro peered closer. The grate had been attached recently, screws unweathered, frame shiny. He removed it carefully. Behind it was a tunnel, small, just wide enough for a child to crawl through. It stretched into darkness. Mia crouched down, shining her light. She couldn't see the end. "Could he have escaped through here?" she asked. "Maybe," Navarro said, "but where does it go?" Jared didn't speak. He just stared into the tunnel, eyes haunted. "Something's wrong," he said. "This isn't just a hiding place." "What is it then?" Mia demanded. Jared looked at her, his voice hollow. "A trap." By the next morning, Navarro was already on the phone with legal. He needed access to Six Flags archival security footage, employee records and internal reports from 2008. The park's PR team responded cautiously, offering vague cooperation, but when Navarro submitted the formal request, the reply came with a flat denial. Files from that period were lost during a database transition, they said. Corrupted backups. "Nothing retrievable." Mia stared at the email in disbelief. "You're telling me the year a child went missing, every relevant record is gone?" "They're stonewalling," Navarro muttered. "Just like before." Mia wasn't surprised. She'd suspected for years that something had been buried. But this felt deliberate, like someone had taken a shovel to the past and made sure nothing could be uncovered. So they shifted focus. If the files were gone, maybe someone who worked security back then still remembered something. Jared helped cross-reference old names. One stood out, Marvin Keene. Keene had been a night shift supervisor in 2008. Retired in 2014, he now lived in a small apartment in Reseda. They visited him late afternoon, unannounced. He opened the door with a slow blink, confused at first, until Navarro showed his badge. Keene's eyes darkened. "This about the Cole boy?" Mia nodded. "You remember?" "I remember the show, and I remember the silence after." He invited them in. The apartment smelled of old coffee and dust. On the wall was a faded photo of Keene in uniform, badge pinned to his chest. "I worked the floor that night," he said. "I didn't see the kid disappear, but I heard the radio chatter. Something was off." "Off how?" Navarro asked. "Management locked things down too quickly. Usually when we have a missing child, we initiate Code Yellow. Lock gates, post lookouts, search teams sweep. But this time, within minutes, we were told not to use radios. Everything had to go through a park liaison. That never happens." "Who gave the order?" Mia asked. Keane hesitated. Her name was Bennett, Sarah Bennett, Assistant Director of Operations. She said it came from above. Is she still with the park? Navarro asked. No, she left a year after the incident, quietly. Mia leaned forward. Did you ever see Ethan? Keane shook his head. But that night around midnight I saw something I'll never forget. He paused. I was walking the east corridor behind the Illusion Dome. Place was closed, staff mostly gone. Then I saw two people. One was Tony Vale, the magician. The other was someone I didn't recognize, a guy in coveralls pushing a cart. What kind of cart? Navarro asked. Rolling prop bin, but it was heavy. Vale was arguing with him, whispering hard. I heard him say, "You shouldn't have brought him there." Mia's chest tightened. Did you report that? Navarro asked. I tried, wrote it up. The next day my report was missing from the system. They told me I must have forgotten to submit it. And you didn't push back? Mia asked sharply. Keane looked ashamed. I had 2 kids in college, mortgage. I couldn't lose my job. Silence fell. Then Navarro said, Do you know where Sarah Bennett is now? Keane thought for a moment. I heard she moved to Oregon, changed careers, but that's all I know. Back in the car, Mia stared out the window. Her thoughts churned. They knew, she said. They knew something happened that night, maybe even who did it. Navarro nodded. But without records, we need more, something concrete. Mia pulled out Ethan's sketchbook. He already gave us more than they did. She flipped to a page with odd symbols, boxes, doors, strange notations. One sketch resembled a control room with screens and cameras. Ethan had labeled them with arrows and numbers. Maybe he saw more than we thought, she said. Navarro studied it. This looks like a security hub, which means he wasn't just hiding, she said. He was watching. A chill passed through both of them. If Ethan had seen something, someone, and left clues, then maybe the truth wasn't just hidden. Maybe it had been documented by a child no one thought would survive. And now the walls that had kept him silent were starting to crack. Tony Vale had once been a rising star in the world of live entertainment. His shows blended traditional illusions with high-tech spectacle, drawing large crowds across the state. At Six Flags Magic Mountain, he'd been the main attraction at the Illusion Dome for nearly a year before Ethan vanished. Then, just days after the incident, he disappeared too. No forwarding address. No farewell performance, just gone. Mia had always remembered his face, smiling, confident, wrapped in a long maroon coat and top hat. But as she and Navarro started digging into his background, the image began to crack. Records showed he'd been fired in August 2008, less than a month after Ethan's disappearance. No formal reason was given. He simply ceased engagement. Even more troubling, his real name wasn't Tony Vale. It was Anthony Varela. And before 2006, there was almost no public record of him at all. They tracked down an old entertainment agent who once represented Varela. The man, now semi-retired, remembered him clearly. Charismatic guy, knew how to command a room, he said. But offstage, a little odd, paranoid. Always insisted on handling his own setups, said he didn't trust the park's staff. Did he ever talk about building his own stage elements? Navarro asked. All the time. He had his own crew, brought in a guy, some private contractor, to design his illusions. Said the park's regulations were too limiting. Did you know who the contractor was? Mia asked. No. Vale never let us meet him. Mia exchanged a look with Navarro. They were circling something, but not yet close enough to grab it. Back at the sheriff's office, they reviewed old interviews from 2008. Vale had been questioned once, briefly, by detectives shortly after Ethan disappeared. In the transcript, he sounded cooperative, even concerned, but one line stood out. I didn't see the boy near the stage, he'd said. My view was blocked by fog from the trapdoor effect. Navarro paused the recording. There was no fog used during that part of the show, he said. Mia frowned. You're sure? I remember the rundown. The fog was only triggered for the levitation act 15 minutes later. So why would he lie? They pulled the original stage plans again, laid out over the table. Mia studied the section marked Act 1 Curtain Entry. A note scribbled in pencil caught her eye. It wasn't in standard handwriting. A sharp slant, tiny letters. Stage hatch reinforced. Manual reset from pit. What does that mean? She asked. Navarro traced the note with his finger. It means there was a trap door, one that could only be reset from below. Mia's heart pounded. If Ethan stepped on it, he could have fallen through without anyone noticing, Navarro finished, and then been locked in. They sat in silence. If Vale had used a custom trapdoor, triggered during his act, and if Ethan had stepped onto it by accident, he might have been taken below the stage, unseen, unheard, sealed in, and no one would have known, unless someone had watched it happen. Mia pulled out Ethan's sketchbook again. Flipping toward the back, she found a page with a series of drawings, figures on a stage, one falling, others watching. In one corner was a shadowy figure drawn in thick pencil, marked with the letter V. She stared at it. He saw him, she whispered. He saw Vale. Navarro leaned in. If this is real, if Ethan drew what happened, then Vale wasn't just nearby. He was involved. But how far did it go? Mia asked. Was it an accident, or did he know? Navarro didn't answer, but in his eyes, something shifted. Suspicion became conviction. We need to find Vale, he said. Now. Mia nodded. Because the boy who vanished had left behind more than memories. He'd left a map, a message, and they were finally beginning to read it. The next step wasn't chasing shadows. It was rebuilding the scene. Navarro secured temporary access to the illusion dome for a full day. Under tight supervision, Mia, Jared, and a small forensic team returned to the crumbling stage, this time with tools, floodlights, and determination. Jared brought original blueprints and Mia brought Ethan's drawings. Between the two, they hoped to recreate the moment that changed everything. They began with the floorboards. Jared marked the approximate location of the original trapdoor used during Tony Vale's act. Years of disuse had left it warped and buried beneath a thin layer of plywood. As they removed the covering, a hidden panel revealed itself, metal reinforced with a circular latch and faint scratches near the edge. This is it, Jared said. Vale's custom install. This wasn't part of the standard design. Mia knelt beside it. The scratches looked deliberate, like someone had clawed or scraped at the metal from the inside. Navarro called over the forensic technician. They tested the lock, still functional but rusted. It opened with a creak, revealing a narrow shaft just big enough for a child to fall through. A small metal ladder lined one side, and below, dim light flickered from a backup lantern. The shaft led directly to the room where Ethan's backpack had been found. It's a straight drop, Navarro confirmed. If Ethan stepped here, he would have gone down instantly. Jared added, and once the hatch closed, you wouldn't hear him from the audience. The acoustics are too thick. They ran the sequence. Jared walked the stage as Vale would have. Mia stood where she remembered Ethan had been, holding her breath. Jared triggered the switch hidden in the floor panel. The hatch popped open. Mia stared into the void below, her mind flashing back to that day. Ethan had leaned forward, curious, unaware, and vanished, not through magic, through design. He was never lost in the park, she whispered. He was taken off the stage. Navarro stood beside her, silent. They descended the ladder and re-entered the hidden room. This time, Mia brought Ethan's sketches. She matched the drawings on the page to markings on the wall. Every line, every shape was accurate. Ethan had mapped the space. She found one more symbol, tucked in a corner, barely visible in the dim light. A square, with a diagonal line through it. Do you recognize this? She asked. Jared nodded slowly. That was Vale's marking system. He used it to signal reset points in his act. That symbol means one way only. Navarro turned sharply. You're saying once Ethan went down there was no return? Unless someone opened it from the outside, Jared confirmed. Mia's voice trembled. He couldn't have gotten out on his own. They followed the ventilation tunnel again. This time they traced it to a sealed grate behind a utility panel in a separate maintenance corridor. It was welded shut. But behind the grate, dust patterns suggested movement. Someone or something had used it. Forensics collected samples. Navarro took photographs. Mia stood silently, fingers pressed against the cool metal. "He was here," she said again. "He waited. He tried." As they exited the building, the weight of their discovery sank deeper. Ethan hadn't disappeared into the crowd. He'd been pulled beneath the stage, left in a soundproof room, his cries muffled by insulation and machinery, all under the nose of the audience. And someone, Tony Vale or whoever had helped him, had sealed the truth behind illusion and architecture. Navarro stood outside, facing the sun. "We don't have the full picture," he said, "but we have a mechanism. We have intent." That's enough to push forward. Mia looked back one last time at the door they had entered. It no longer felt like just a building. It felt like a tomb. "A child didn't vanish into thin air," she said. "He was buried alive in a magic trick." And no one noticed, until now. They called it the Whisper Room, That's what Jared began calling the space beneath the stage after their third visit, when they discovered what had been hiding in plain sight all along. The deeper they searched, the more the space revealed itself. Behind the shelving unit in the back corner, hidden by 2 broken panels and a tangle of wires, was another narrow opening. It looked like nothing, just damaged drywall at first glance, but inside was a second chamber. Smaller, colder. It was here they found the final drawings. The walls were covered in crayon marks, finger smears, and etched figures. Not playful ones, distorted faces with jagged teeth, eyes too big, mouths wide open in mid-scream. Above them, in shaky handwriting, the word "listen" had been repeated over and over. The air felt heavier. Forensics measured the decibel levels in the chamber and confirmed what Mia and Navarro already suspected. It was built to absorb sound. Layers of foam behind the drywall, sealed air vents. No outside noise in, no cries out. "It's a dead room," the technician said. "A child could scream in here for hours and no one would hear." Mia sat on the edge of an overturned crate. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced the word "help" carved into the wooden beam beside her. It was deeper than the rest. Older. Done with something sharp. "He wasn't hiding," she said. "He was imprisoned." Jared stood silently, flashlight beam trembling. Navarro paced slowly. "Someone built this intentionally. Not just as storage, but as isolation, soundproof, secret." Jared's voice broke the silence. "I heard him." Both Mia and Navarro turned. "In 2008, he said, maybe a day or 2 after the boy vanished. I came in early for a rig check, heard something, a voice muffled. You never told us that," Navarro said. "I convinced myself it was the pipes, airflow, rats. Anything but a kid trapped inside a wall." He looked at Mia, eyes hollow. "I was scared. I didn't want to believe what I heard. And by the time I came back later that day, the sound was gone." Mia stood. Her expression was cold, sharp. "You heard my brother. And you walked away." Jared couldn't answer. Navarro stepped between them. "We can't change the past. But we can find out who made this happen and why." Later that afternoon, they brought in structural experts to trace the hidden room's connection to the rest of the theater. It had been retrofitted, built inside a former storage recess, covered over with false paneling. Not part of any original blueprint, there was no record of its construction, but it had power. A small fuse box powered a single overhead light, connected to a private circuit, one no one had noticed before. That detail changed everything. "Someone needed this space to function independently," Navarro said, "and they didn't want it linked to the park's main systems." Jared nodded. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a design." Forensics also found remnants of food wrappers, plastic bottles, and a frayed blanket stuffed behind a crate, all dated from the correct period. Mia sat outside the building for a long time after the sweep ended. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. She stared at the stage door and imagined Ethan, 10 years old, lost, scared, whispering through darkness. She imagined him waiting, hoping. And then, silence. Navarro approached, sitting beside her. He was stronger than we gave him credit for, Mia said. He fought to leave a mark. He did, Navarro said. He left us everything he could. The question that now haunted both of them wasn't whether Ethan had been there. It was what happened after the Whisper Room went silent. 2 days after the discovery of the Whisper Room, Mia returned to the sheriff's office to review Ethan's belongings once more. There was something she couldn't shake, a sense that Ethan had tried to leave more than drawings behind. Something intentional, something hidden. She asked for access to his backpack again. As she unzipped it slowly, the scent of dust and old plastic lingered. Inside, beneath the sketchbook and the plastic dinosaur, a side pouch had gone unnoticed before. Deep, narrow, easy to miss. Inside it, wrapped in a faded bandana, was a small black cassette tape. Her breath caught. Navarro arrived minutes later. They played it in the evidence lab, using an old recorder recovered from the department archive. Static filled the room at first. Then slowly a voice emerged, soft, high-pitched, nervous. "Testing. Okay, this is Ethan." The sound of shifting fabric. A long pause. "I don't know how long I've been here. I can't see a clock. I think it's been a lot of nights. I don't know if it's still July." Another pause. Breathing. "I hear them. They come at night. I think they think I'm asleep. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they just walk around. They don't talk to me. They don't bring food anymore. I saved one wrapper. I'm hiding it under the blanket so I don't forget." The tape crackled, then more breathing. "If someone finds this..." "I tried. I really tried." His voice dropped lower. "I think someone's coming." Silence. Then, faint in the background, footsteps, dragging sounds, a heavy door creaking open. And then, nothing. The tape cut to static and ended. Mia sat frozen. Navarro beside her had gone still. It wasn't just proof Ethan had been alive after he vanished. It was a timeline, and it was evidence of contact. Someone had been down there. Someone had seen him, chosen to leave him. Navarro immediately had the tape digitized. Forensics ran enhancement to isolate the background noises. They confirmed the dragging wasn't the boy. Too heavy. More like an object being pulled across the floor. "What do you think they were doing?" Mia asked. Navarro shook his head. "Cleaning something up, or moving something out." The idea chilled them both. The next morning, Jared returned with one more discovery. In a box of salvage parts from the Illusion Dome, he found a second cassette recorder, same brand, same year. It had been stored with old sound effect gear. Its battery was corroded, but inside was a second tape. The label read, "Rehearsal FX708. They played it. It began with clicks and tones, then music, a short loop of circus-themed audio. Then underneath the track, unintended, accidental, faint conversation. A man's voice. "You didn't lock it properly." Another voice, younger, hushed. "I thought you were going to take care of it." The first voice again. "We're not going back. Leave it. It's done." The tape ended abruptly. They ran voice comparison through archived interview footage. The older voice, gravelly, quick, was a match to Tony Vale. The younger voice remained unidentified. But the implication was clear. Ethan had not simply fallen through a trap door. He'd been left there, and someone else had helped cover it up. "This is the break we needed," Navarro said. "We have audio, we have intent. We have collaboration." Mia stared at the screen showing Ethan's wavering waveform frozen mid-sentence. "We have his voice," she whispered. Later that day, she sat alone in her car, holding the tape. For years, she had imagined what her brother might have gone through. The darkness, the fear, the waiting. Now she didn't have to imagine. He had told her himself. He had fought. He had recorded. He had left behind proof. Now it was their turn to speak for him. And the voices that once whispered in the dark were finally about to be heard in daylight. The tape changed everything. Within 48 hours of its release to authorities, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office reopened Ethan Cole's case. The recording was leaked. No one claimed responsibility. And within a day, it had gone viral. Podcasts, true crime forums, news stations, Everyone was talking about the boy who had spoken from the dark 16 years ago. Public outrage erupted. Six Flags Magic Mountain issued a statement the next morning. "We are shocked and saddened by these developments. Our hearts are with the Cole family. We are fully cooperating with authorities." But Mia knew better. The same institution that had sealed a wall around Ethan, that had destroyed records, that had paid off silence for years, was not going to confess overnight. She and Navarro scheduled a meeting with the park's legal counsel and two executives. The room was cold, full of suits and shallow concern. "You had knowledge of this hidden chamber," Navarro said. "You had an employee file erased, a camera disabled, and multiple eyewitness accounts buried. And now we have audio of your headliner discussing what appears to be an intentional cover-up." The lead executive kept his expression neutral. "We don't condone any of what's being suggested." "You buried a child alive in your attraction," Mia said sharply. "And when he tried to call for help, you ignored it. There's no proof the company authorized—" "Save it," Navarro interrupted. "We're not here for your spin. We're here for the truth." Silence. Then the park's attorney spoke. "You'll be contacted by our legal department regarding an offer of settlement. It's our intent to resolve this in good faith." Mia leaned forward. "No money can fix what you buried." That night she went public. With the support of a growing online movement and multiple journalists, she shared Ethan's drawings, the enhanced audio files, and details of the hidden room. Hashtags exploded. People began tagging the park's social media non-stop. Protests were organized. Victims of other theme park incidents began speaking out. Within a week, state investigators arrived. Forced to comply, Six Flags turned over employee schedules, construction records, and internal memos long hidden. They revealed a disturbing pattern. Several stage modifications had been made by contractors, paid under pseudonyms with no official oversight. Tony Vail had received nearly $18,000 in private funds, coded as performance logistics. None of it taxed, none of it legal. Then, in a turn no one expected, a park maintenance crew inspecting an old utility trail on the edge of the park grounds made a discovery. A shallow grave. The site was remote behind a fenced-off area used for obsolete equipment, a place rarely visited, mostly overgrown. Inside the grave were bones, tiny, wrapped in remnants of what looked like a magician's cloak. DNA testing began immediately. Mia was notified in person. She didn't cry, not right away. It took hours for the numbness to break, for the weight of 16 years to finally crash through. Navarro stood beside her, silent, steady. They both knew what the results would say. And yet hearing it confirmed was like a second death. It was Ethan, the child who had whispered in the dark, the boy who had drawn his way through fear, the brother who had waited for someone to hear him. He had made it out of the chamber, but not far enough. No official arrest had yet been made, but Tony Vail was now a person of interest in an active homicide investigation. He hadn't been seen in over a decade, and the name Anthony Varela had gone cold. Interpol was notified. Meanwhile, Six Flags' public image crumbled, lawsuits stacked, board members resigned. And through it all, Mia spoke, on podcasts, on news segments, in schools, telling Ethan's story not as a tragedy but as a warning, because the silence of institutions had a cost, and Ethan had paid it in full. The confirmation of Ethan Cole's remains brought an eerie stillness to the frenzy. For all the sound and fury of protests, investigations, and headlines, now there was only grief. Quiet, heavy, final. Mia attended the identification process with Navarro. The lab confirmed the match using DNA from Ethan's toothbrush, which Sandra Cole had preserved for over a decade, in a zip-locked pouch labeled Ethan Bathroom Drawer. She hadn't been able to throw it away. The medical examiner determined cause of death as exposure and dehydration. No signs of trauma, no evidence of restraint. He'd escaped the whisper room only to collapse just beyond its reach, too weak, too late. It was worse than murder. It was neglect, orchestrated through silence. The media flooded again. But this time, the narrative wasn't just about a boy who vanished. It was about the system that let him die. Park administration, negligent managers, legal loopholes. Mia made sure no name was forgotten. Six Flags, facing national scrutiny, issued a formal apology. Public, emotional, calculated. They offered a multi-million-dollar settlement. Mia declined. Instead, she sued. The lawsuit, backed by civil rights attorneys and supported by public funding campaigns, alleged gross negligence, obstruction of justice, and willful endangerment. Depositions began immediately. Jared Sloan testified under oath. Marvin Keene came forward again. Even former park vendors broke silence. The weight of collective truth was finally heavier than the machinery of denial. Six Flags settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. As part of the agreement, they funded a new initiative in Ethan's name, an independent watchdog committee for amusement park safety, managed by third-party child safety organizations. They also committed to building a memorial at Magic Mountain, not hidden at the back but placed directly in the park's central plaza. It would be called Ethan's Light, a stage, a plaque, a promise. Meanwhile, Jared Sloan resigned from public life. He never spoke to the media again. In his final testimony, he admitted his guilt, not in harming Ethan, but in choosing comfort over courage. He asked Mia's forgiveness. She didn't give it, not out of anger, but because she believed forgiveness should be Ethan's to grant. Navarro retired the month the case was closed. He declined a formal ceremony, but kept the case file, redacted, battered, stained with coffee and years, in his desk drawer. He mailed Mia the original sketchbook with a note. He kept drawing. Now you write the rest. Mia didn't stop. She founded the Ethan Foundation, focused on raising awareness for missing children cases, advocating for transparency in corporations that cater to families, and funding reforms in local investigative procedures. She spoke at universities, partnered with other grieving families, and consulted with the Department of Justice on ethics in private security contracts. Ethan's name became more than a memory. It became policy. At the park's reopening ceremony for the newly redesigned plaza, Mia stood beneath the plaque bearing her brother's name. There were no cameras allowed, no corporate speeches, just music, a moment of silence, and the gentle hum of life returning. The plaque read, Ethan Cole, 1998, 2008. He listened to the world. The world finally listened back. Mia touched the inscription with her fingertips. Navarro stood beside her, quiet. Sandra and Rick, though no longer together, arrived arm in arm. They had stopped blaming each other long ago. All that remained now was shared loss and pride. A soft wind passed through the crowd. No grand finale, no illusion, no trick of the eye, just truth. Justice wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive with sirens or spotlights. It came in pieces, taped notes, forgotten symbols, the courage of a sister, the persistence of an old detective, and the stubborn, quiet legacy of a little boy who refused to be erased. The stage was no longer cursed. It was reclaimed. In the months following the dedication of Ethan's Light, echoes of the boy who vanished continued to ripple outward, into the lives he'd touched, the laws he'd changed, and the hearts he'd awakened. Mia became a symbol of unyielding hope, but she was never alone. Volunteers poured into the Ethan Foundation. Parents who once felt isolated found community. Every week, Mia fielded messages from families searching for missing loved ones, law enforcement officials asking for advice, and journalists wanting to understand what made this case break through the noise. She never grew used to the attention. Instead, she kept her focus on small, concrete actions, organizing search parties, teaching workshops on child safety, lobbying for stricter oversight in entertainment venues. Ethan's legacy grew not from spectacle, but from persistence, one hard-fought change at a time. Navarro, officially retired, found new purpose as a mentor for cold case detectives. He spent afternoons at the foundation, reviewing files, offering advice, and sometimes just sitting in silence with parents who carried wounds only he could understand. In courtrooms across the country, Ethan's name surfaced as a precedent. Policies shifted. Theme parks everywhere revised their safety protocols and began installing real-time surveillance backups, transparency dashboards, and open lines for anonymous employee tips. Where once there had been secrecy, there was now scrutiny. Documentarians and writers asked to chronicle Ethan's story, but Mia insisted that the spotlight stay on the issue, not on the tragedy. Her brother's face became a symbol, a reminder of what was lost when profit was placed above people, when children's voices were ignored. Through all of this, the Cole family, once shattered by loss, found a fragile new peace. Sandra and Rick attended counseling, joined grief groups, and became advocates for institutional accountability. They learned that grief never leaves, but it can be transformed. Jared Sloan sent a letter to the Ethan Foundation a year after the memorial. He wrote that he'd begun volunteering at a youth center, repairing stage lights and teaching teenagers the value of speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable. Mia read his letter twice, her feelings complicated, grateful for his growth, unable to forget the cost. 6 Flags. Magic Mountain changed too. The stage that once hid secrets now hosted performances by local schoolchildren. The plaque bearing Ethan's name was polished every week. Security briefings at the park began with Ethan's story, a tradition designed to keep vigilance alive. But it was the smaller moments that spoke loudest. A little girl in the crowd tracing the letters on the memorial plaque. A mother pausing by the stage, holding her child's hand tighter. An off-duty guard walking the empty corridors, checking twice before locking up. Mia visited the park sometimes, standing in the crowd, anonymous but watchful. She listened to the laughter, the music, the everyday magic of children at play. She knew Ethan's presence would always linger, not in the darkness, but in the light. As years passed, his story inspired others to come forward. Missing person cases were reopened, families reconnected. Legislators cited Ethan's law as the gold standard for theme park safety, mandating unannounced inspections, staff training, and severe penalties for neglect. Through each wave of change, Mia's message remained clear. One voice, even whispered, can spark an avalanche. And still the world remembered Ethan Cole, not just as the boy who disappeared, but as the boy whose absence taught a nation to listen better, act faster, and never take silence for an answer. If Ethan's story moved you, consider subscribing now. We share stories that make a difference, that shine light on what others would rather keep in the shadows. And if you want to continue exploring the hidden truths behind unsolved mysteries, don't forget to click on the next video suggested on your screen. There's always another story waiting, a secret left behind, just waiting to be found. Thank you for listening, thank you for caring, and most of all, thank you for remembering Ethan Cole.